Walter stepped in, and for the first time in almost a decade, he saw Ben clearly. Not through a photograph, not in a dream. Ben stood there, taller than Walter remembered, thin, pale. His eyes were a perfect mirror of Walter's younger self, but holding sadness far beyond his years. "Hi, Dad," the boy said. Walter couldn't respond. His throat clenched, hands trembled, as if the hug that was coming might break him in half. Ben reached out, a simple hug. Walter stepped back, then stopped, frozen. Ben slowly lowered his arms. His eyes didn't rage. They just dimmed with quiet disappointment. And that was the moment Walter finally understood. This was the price of survival. Not the wounds, not the memories, but the inability to touch the ones he loved most. In the next part, you'll see Walter face the painful truth. PTSD doesn't just go away. He must choose, continue living like a ghost, or face his nightmares head on, to find his way back as a father. That night, Walter left the house. Snow fell lightly. No one said goodbye. No one stopped him. He sat in his truck for hours, engine off. The image of Ben's little arms reaching out and falling down played on repeat, like a broken tape with no escape. One failed hug can make a child question their entire childhood. But for a PTSD veteran, that hug is more terrifying than bullets. Walter leaned over the steering wheel, tears falling in silence. It was the first time in 10 years that he cried, not because of the past, but because he feared there might be no more chances to love his son the right way. The next day, he walked into the nearest VA clinic. When the nurse asked, "What brings you in today?" Walter couldn't meet her eyes. He just said, I can't hug my son." The nurse didn't speak, but her eyes held no judgment, only understanding. He was referred to a PTSD support group for veterans. At first, Walter refused. He hated sitting in circles and talking about feelings. He used to be a sergeant, a man responsible for keeping others alive. Pain was something he hid behind a cold stare, never something to share. But then he remembered Ben's eyes, and for the first time in his life, Walter said yes to facing the deepest fear he'd ever known. The first meeting. 6 men in the room, all of them veterans. One had fought in Iraq. Another used to sleep under the Golden Gate Bridge, a veteran homeless who had lost his mind on sedatives. Every man carried a story he'd never told his wife or children. Every man had once been afraid of himself, because at some point, they stopped believing they were worthy of love. Walter didn't speak the whole session. Until the very end, a black veteran named Marcus turned to him and asked, "You ever wake up in the middle of the night thinking your wife was the enemy, then lock yourself in the garage for 2 days?" Walter nodded, barely. Marcus gave him a half smile, patted his shoulder. "Then welcome, brother. We're not crazy. We just never got guided off the battlefield." From that day on, Walter came back every week. Each session, they shared just a little. The nightmares, the muscle spasms, the suspicious looks from family, and the heartbreaking questions from their kids. "Dad, are you scared of me?" At group, Walter met a man named Eli, a former veteran homeless who spent 5 years sleeping in parks. He used to keep a knife under his pillow, terrified someone would attack him in the night. But what finally broke Eli wasn't the cold. It was the day his daughter walked past him on the street and didn't recognize her own father. Walter sat silently for a long time, then finally asked, "If you could go back to that moment, what would you do differently?" Eli didn't hesitate. "I'd ask for help, even if it was just to say I'm not okay. Because war didn't kill me, silence did." He survived the war, but he couldn't survive inside his own home. He was once a Marine sergeant, a commander in some of the bloodiest battles in Afghanistan. But today, he stands frozen outside his own son's bedroom door, unable to raise his arms for a hug. The reason? Not because he doesn't love his child, but because PTSD has turned him into a man terrified of his own emotions. Can you believe it? A PTSD veteran living alone in a wooden cabin on the edge of town, not because no one loves him, but because even a hug now feels like a threat. And the most heartbreaking part? His son once asked his mother, "Does Dad not love me?" What you're about to hear is the true story of Walter Hagan, a father, a veteran, and a soul lost in the war after the war. And if you think PTSD is just about nightmares, stay with us. You're about to witness the terrifying price of survival. Walter Hagan was once a soldier to be admired. He wasn't homeless, but he lived like a veteran homeless, isolated, disconnected, hiding. Ironically, he returned from the battlefield physically intact, but his mind had been left behind. In 2009, during a recon mission in Kandahar, his patrol vehicle hit an IED. 3 fellow Marines died instantly. Walter survived, shrapnel embedded in his flesh, but the thing that stayed with him forever was the scream of a young private calling "Mom" just before taking his last breath. That sound became the soundtrack of Walter's nightmares. Back in the U.S., he was awarded a medal. He was welcomed home like a hero, but no one knew that every night he'd bolt upright in bed like under ambush, shirt soaked in sweat, breathing ragged, eyes wild with panic. His wife, Linda, once feared he might kill her in his sleep. Walter never laid a hand on her, but he never hugged her either, not once since coming home. A year later, Linda took their 2 kids and left, not because she hated him, but because she feared their children might forget who their father even was. Walter didn't fight it. He saw himself as a ticking time bomb, and in his mind, keeping his loved ones safe meant keeping them away. So he left town, moved to an old wooden cabin on the edge of a Pennsylvania forest, lived like a veteran homeless man. No friends, no neighbors. He carved wood, planted vegetables, listened to the radio, and every night he locked himself in with dreams of fire, blood, and wordless screams. Every time a strange car passed, he tensed up. Every knock on the door made him hold his breath, and every time he saw a photo of his son, he wondered, will there ever be a day when I'm normal enough to hug him without scaring him? Until one cold February day, Linda called, after 8 years of silence. Her voice shook. "Walter, he needs you. He's asking about his dad. He wants to know why you never hugged him." Walter was cleaning his hunting rifle when she called. His hand froze. For 8 years, he thought keeping his distance was an act of love. But now he realized, love without presence is just another kind of wound. His son's name is Ben, 12 years old, doesn't remember much about his dad, just a man who always stared out the window and backed away every time the boy ran toward him. "He asked me, 'Does Dad not love me?'" Linda said, and those words crushed Walter's heart. He got in his truck, drove straight to the city. Every mile was a gasp for breath. Every red light felt like a battle inside. And when he finally parked in front of their old house, he sat motionless for over 15 minutes, just trying to find the courage to step out. Linda opened the door. She wasn't angry. She didn't blame him. She looked at him the way only someone who's seen it all can, with quiet understanding. "Ben's in the living room. I'll give you 2 some time." Walter started writing letters to Ben, not to send, just to write. Each line was a piece of memory. Nights in Kandahar, the moment he couldn't pull a buddy's body from a burning vehicle, the first time he saw Ben in the hospital, tiny hand gripping his finger. The letters became a way for Walter to talk to himself, and slowly he began peeling off the invisible armor PTSD had wrapped around him for 10 years. One night after group, Walter drove to Linda's house. No warning. Nothing in his hands. He just needed to stand at her door, and this time he didn't shake. Linda opened it, surprised. "Walter, is everything okay?" He didn't answer right away. He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket. "It's for Ben. You don't have to give it to him now, just when he's ready." Linda took it, nodded, said nothing. "And," Walter paused, "I'm trying. I don't know if I'll ever be better, but I don't want to run anymore." But would Ben even want to open a door that had been shut for so long? And Walter, could he face his deepest fear, to finally truly hold his son again? Coming up next, we witness the moment Walter confronts the greatest pain of all, not gunfire or explosions, but the eyes of a child who isn't sure if he should trust his father again. A moment many soldiers have lived, but few have spoken about. The following month passed like Walter was relearning how to be human. Each morning he no longer asked, "What time will the nightmares hit today?" But instead, "What can I do to be more worthy in my son's eyes?" He still went to group, still wrote letters, and for the first time he got a text from Linda, just 3 words. But they made his heart race. Ben read it. No emojis, no commentary, but it was enough. Enough to make Walter feel alive again. Did you know? For a PTSD veteran, nothing is harder than believing they deserve forgiveness, especially when they can't even forgive themselves. A week later, Linda called. Ben wanted to meet at the old park, the one where they used to go fishing back when Ben was still in preschool. Walter arrived early, wearing a thick coat, holding a book about eagles, Ben's favorite animal as a kid. He sat on the bench, wine slicing through his clothes, heart burning hot. For the first time in 10 years, he felt like a boy on his first date. Ben arrived, alone, no mom by his side. He wasn't that little boy who used to run around anymore. He was a teenager now, shoulders broad, eyes guarded. Walter stood, almost reached out, then stopped. Couldn't bring himself to do it. Ben sat down first, quiet. Walter followed. Silence. Then finally, Ben spoke. I read it, the letter. Walter swallowed hard. And? I didn't understand everything, but there was one sentence I keep thinking about. Walter nodded. Which one? I didn't hug you, not because you were unworthy of love, but because I was afraid my arms might hurt you. Ben looked up at him. Is that true? Were you really scared of me? Walter didn't look away. This time his eyes didn't run. He nodded. I never knew when a memory might take over. There was a time I woke up with my hand gripping your mom's collar. I didn't want you to ever look at me and see a monster. Ben was quiet. Then he said softly, I never thought you were a monster. I just felt invisible. The wind was cold. The lake's surface barely rippled. Walter looked down at his hands, fingers that once gripped a rifle, now trembling just to reach out to his son. He whispered, barely audible, I don't want to live like this anymore. Ben looked him straight in the eyes. So what are you going to do? Walter took a deep breath. I'm learning how to hug again, from scratch, like I was never a soldier, just a dad. That moment, Ben stood up, and then, what no one expected, happened. Ben walked over and hugged him. Walter froze at first. His body jerked, almost resisting, as if every memory screamed, as if the war was rushing back. But he didn't run. His arms rose, and he held his son. For the first time since the war, he touched another human, not to defend, not to rescue, but to love. And he didn't go crazy. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just stood still, as if the storm inside him had finally calmed. That night, Linda texted. Ben told me. He smiled all night. Walter didn't text back. He just sat in his cabin holding a letter Ben had given him, with one crooked line written in a childlike scrawl. You don't have to be perfect, Dad. You just have to be here. One hug, one small step. But for someone who had been emotionally homeless, no shelter in the hearts of those he loved, it was a climb as high as a mountain. Do you know how many PTSD veterans out there have never gotten the chance to hug their child again? Have you ever watched someone you love become a stranger because of the wounds they brought back from war? Drop a comment below. Share your thoughts. Can love truly heal? Or do we need something more? The following spring, Walter began replanting the garden behind his cabin. Tomatoes, lettuce, a few herbs, but most importantly, he planted life back into his own soul. Each week, Ben came to visit. Sometimes they just sat in silence. Sometimes they repaired the porch together. Walter still didn't say much, but he was learning to listen. And Ben somehow understood. His father's quiet presence was his way of saying, I love you. Not every PTSD veteran gets this chance, but if you've made it this far in the story, maybe you're the one who can help them find it. Walter kept going to his therapy group, but now he didn't just listen. He spoke. He talked about the fear of not being able to hug his child, the feeling of being a veteran homeless in his own family, having a house, having people, but still feeling like he lived outside their world. And then he began to volunteer. Once a month, he visited a shelter for PTSD veterans without homes. Not to get pity, but to let someone, even just one person, know, you're not alone. One man named Carlos, 51 years old, had lived under a bridge for 6 years. He broke down in tears when Walter spoke about Ben. You still have a chance with your son, Carlos said. I don't. He calls someone else dad now. Walter didn't have the answer, but he placed a hand on Carlos's shoulder. Then help someone else's kid, Carlos. We can't go back, but we can save someone else's future. Linda began to open up too. She didn't move back. She didn't need to. They didn't have to be husband and wife again to be parents together. They were two people who had survived a war and were learning to live again. One time, Linda asked, Are you still afraid? Walter looked out at Ben, laughing in the yard, and said, "I still hear the bombs. I still wake up soaked in sweat. But now I know, after everything, someone stayed." Walter's story is not a miracle. There's no magic here, just time, courage, and people who didn't give up. And if you ever thought PTSD was just a medical term, remember this. It's the reason thousands of veteran homeless never come home. It's why hundreds of PTSD veterans choose silence over asking for help. It's what quietly steals away hugs, kisses, and even family memories. Do you know a veteran? Have you seen someone change after war? Do you think they might need to hear, "I'm here for you," even more than a thank you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because every word you leave could be the spark that helps a veteran step out of the darkness. And if you believe stories like this, stories of healing, of coming home, of finding family again, deserve to be told all the way to the end, subscribe to Hope Street right now, because at Hope Street, we believe every soldier who comes home deserves a home, not just a roof, but a place where they can hug their child without fear. Hit subscribe so you never miss the stories that will make you cry, hope, and believe in life all over again. We are Hope Street, and the next story might be yours. See you in the next video.